So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this final session of our focus on impact investment, culture, and creative industries. We have delved inside the topic. We have seen what is happening from different perspectives, what is happening today. So what we're going to do today, this session with this wonderful gang, and it's an amazing gang indeed, we are going to see, or we are going to imagine what is going to happen in the future in the area. So we're going to travel, or we're going to try to travel 20 years ahead, 2044, and we will try to take into account a world that is changing rapidly and in a way that we cannot really foresee. We are now experiencing different kind of technological developments, climate crisis, imbalances in the society, changes on the geopolitical environment, and what is going to be the role of creative industries and culture. So this is what we're going to discuss today, very quickly. So we're trying to brainstorm, or because we are too many, probably it's going to be a storm. So we are going to moderate together with Elena Mavromichali. Let me just take a moment to introduce you to this panel. So Elena is one of the leading strategists on culture, creativity, and innovation, with more than 20 years professional experience acting since 2019 as the advisor of arts and culture to the Office of the Prime Minister. And having this role, she has done amazing things, trying to coordinate the field, working together with different ministries. I must say that since 2014, Elena, she has been acting as facilitator and advocate for the support of the cultural and creative industries in Greece, engaged in cross-sectoral collaboration and relevant policy making. Myself, I'm mostly focusing on the future until now, so I'm the UNESCO chairholder on futures research at the Foundation for Research and Technology. But recently, the last 2 years, I'm also serving as the president of MOMus, the Metropolitan Organization of Museums of Visual Arts of Thessaloniki. And who else is in our amazing panel? And I will just, with random order, yes, thank you. So we have Monika Tsiliberdi. Monika is head of the Directorate for the Development of Contemporary Creation of the Hellenic Ministry of Culture. And she has studied archaeology, art history at the University of Athens, also landscape studies at the University of Leicester. She has worked as an art historian, but also as a journalist on magazines, newspaper, public television, and she teaches contemporary art, management and design of inclusive and accessible art events at the Institute of Education at the National School of Public Administration. You're going to see we have really diverse profiles. Niki Dandolou, engineer and economist by training. She has started her career as engineer, but very quickly, and since 2019, she has an amazing and very complex role, appointed as a special secretary of the Hellenic government, responsible for the management of EU co-finance programs at national level. You can imagine that she's dealing with everything, many sectors, from entrepreneurship, energy, transport, environment, innovation, education, employment, and of course, culture, just to say some of them. Amazing experience and a very important role, what is happening in funding in culture and creative industries in the country. Dimitra, Kizlari, you were an amazing moderator. We cannot do the same. She's a subject matter expert in cultural policy. She's currently working at the National Lottery Heritage Fund in the United Kingdom as an investment manager, and you have been overseeing a portfolio of around £11.5 million, an impressive work, and thank you. And she has been also, and she's acting as an evaluator in different kind of programs like Creative Europe and many others. And of course, Laura, we have heard a lot. I think there is a special connection with you and Elena. So Laura, thank you for being here today. Founding partner of Upstart Collab, senior deputy chairman of the United States National Endowment for the Arts, just to say a few things. You have been a consultant at McKinsey, in other organizations, senior advisor to the United Nations Development Program. I must say, because I also think, I have just selected some of the things You have been also publishing articles at the New York Times, Financial Times, and Harvard Business Review, just to mention a few things. And we are closing with Fran Sanderson. She's the Director of Arts and Culture Investments and Programs at Nesta. And if you don't know Nesta, Google it. Nesta is the top innovation agency at the UK. They are delivering amazing things in different kind of sectors. I have followed your work on innovation and foresight. Fran is working on the cultural part. She has developed arts and cultural finance at Nesta, overseeing an amount of 30 million plus 30 million pounds. And she's now actually, she's in transition at the moment, so she's going to become the CEO of Figurative, and if you are wondering what is Figurative, it's a spin-out of Nesta that is going to focus on supporting new business at the cultural and creative industries. And I think I'm done. And we are going to we're going to do this journey with two central questions, and we will give you the floor so you can brainstorm, you can we would like to hear your ideas. So the first question is, we have discussed a bit that we are moving towards a future that is unstable. We have different views of what is going to happen. We don't really know what is going to happen on national level, on global level, on regional level. New technologies are transforming what we are experiencing today and what we are going to experience in the future. So the question is, and I would like to ask you to give us your feedback either on a personal capacity or maybe a mixed or representing your organization. So what kind of policies are needed to address this rapidly changing environment, and what tools are available? And I would ask first Monika to comment, and maybe you can give us your view regarding what is happening on the national level.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to start with, Elena and Epaminondas, with this distinguished panel. I'm representing the Hellenic Ministry of Culture. Our role is significant in what is happening and how the future is going to become for the cultural and creative sector. So our responsibility is great. It's very big. We need to reform and redefine our policies in order to form a better future for the cultural and creative sector. So in order to do that, we have to think outside the box. We have to cut the red tape to do that, first of all, and find the challenges. What are the challenges of today? Be honest about it, and find the synergies in order to reform our policies. So we need synergies, interministerial, cross-sectorial synergies. Otherwise, nothing can be done in a proper way. So we have to break the silos that exist in our area. So the first thing to do is, I think, to find the stakeholders and talk with the stakeholders and define what needs to be done for the future. The second we need to do is to map the cultural and creative sector, find the pros and cons that exist, and that would be the best way to shape our new policy, and be honest about it, and define exactly what we want to do in the future and with whom we need to work. So if we have a base evidence policy, cultural policy, public policy, things are going to become better. The first thing we need to work on is the status of the artist, or the situation of the artist, the conditions, the working condition of the artist and the artist professionals, and the situation of the artist nowadays and how it's going to become in the future. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can see best practices in a European level, like the Irish model or like the Belgian model, the French model. We're working on this direction. Second is to facilitate access to funding. This is essential, otherwise nothing can be done. And of course, capacity building. It's a big need to do some upskilling, reskilling, not only to cultural professionals, but also in the ministry, in order to understand and follow what needs to be done. I think also it's essential to establish a new digital framework that fits the cultural and creative sector DNA, that is appropriate for the CCS. Otherwise, we don't fit in the digital model that exists in other sectors. And encourage new and alternative business models. It is very difficult for the ministry to understand how the world of investment works. But we need to understand that in order to do something for the future. So reinforce, of course, the intellectual property rights, which is crucial, and things need to be done, especially in this digital era. So these are the main concerns, and these are the tools in order to achieve something better for the future. Nowadays, we're working towards this direction, but I have to mention the RRF. The funding from RRF is essential for what we're doing, for what the next day of the cultural and creative sector would be. We have lots of initiatives that are moving towards this direction. I have to mention two good examples. The one is the platform we're designing now for the cultural and creative sector, the social security and the working conditions of the artists, which is going to be a register for the cultural professionals with good incentives, I hope. And the second is arts on prescription, which will help people with mental problems with art. These two are both bold and innovative initiatives. So we have to do this kind of intersectoral activities and incentives. So I think this way the future is going to form.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Monika. And I understand that these are the concerns and the first plans or the strategy for the ministry for the next years to come. And I would like to give the floor to Niki. And Niki, you are also working a lot on a national level, but you are also acting as a link with what is happening in the Europe and what is the policy on a European level. So I would like to give us your view, taking into account this, your role, and give us your ideas. I mean, what tools are available to take us in, not safe, because there is no such a thing as safety towards the future, but what we can use and what are what is available out there.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Epaminondas, and thank you, Elena, for organizing this amazing panel. Yes, CCIs and the future as a multiplier of growth, as a driver of growth, has been a discussion this morning, and I'm sure it will continue for many years and decades to come. It's obviously an issue that connects many different subjects and interests and therefore disciplines. So it's quite difficult, as it has been demonstrated in previous panels and as what Monika said, to reflect the needs together with the governance necessary to provide the tools for the future. You talked about challenges like the demographic, like the climate change, and the digital revolution. For all of these, there is a strategy both at national levels and in our country, as well as European strategies and policies, with the relevant tools. I will mention sort of briefly some of them, like, for example, in the environmental sector and the emissions, as we very well know, some of us, most of us maybe, that there is the European Green Deal, There is the European New Bauhaus. So there are major initiatives in place for all member states to receive both advice, legal framework, and financing. For the digital revolution, obviously there is a huge investment, both at EU level of the structural funds, the innovation technology funds, Horizon, and all the RRF financing, of course, and the economic subsidies for the entrepreneurship as such. So there are many different instruments, and inevitably it becomes complicated to navigate all this role, especially in the field of culture, which in effect, for me, may be very simply put, but it's a conjunction of all of these issues together as creativity, obviously, in any and every sector as a possibility. So, and maybe that's where the some necessary or unavoidable, or I don't know to what sense unavoidable bureaucracy also exists, also at the level of the European Union. Maybe that's why Brexit happened, and there is much less bureaucracy at that level. The states certainly have much less bureaucracy than we do. But I think that's where the challenge lies for the future, and how to deal with this sort of challenge. To find a way to do creative examples on the ground, best practices, like Nesta, for example. I'm sure Laura will, Fran, sorry, will say all these things in the future. We need someone to show examples of tools, blended instruments, and strategies on the ground, so that we can inspire more people to do it, and maybe persons that may have creative interest but are not necessarily economists, as it has been mentioned before, or vice versa. Economists also can benefit greatly from some creativity. So I think we can design things, and at the European Union, they're trying also to do this blending of instruments. And so this dialogue, I think, has started. It's not easy, because each discipline tends to want their own things, as we can all imagine. As, for example, innovation so far was only perceived as technological innovation, not as a creative tool, or as creative or as social innovation. That, for example, is a field we're interested in developing a lot in our country. And so there are tools like impact bonds, like impact funds that we could create, social funding and social innovation tools, or we can do networks or coalitions, perhaps, of not only governance, but on the ground, of examples of social enterprises, together with the creative sector representatives, the artists, the professionals, in order to see how we can exploit this. Creative Europe, for example, is trying to do these hubs and networks and platforms. And, but for instance, I think the danger, or the risk, if you like, is also to see some concrete examples, like the work that is being done in sectors or in other countries, that we have good examples global. Because, again, I was looking at Creative Europe also recently, and they have networks, hubs, and platforms. And someone might say, okay, what's the difference? And we have very many synonyms in order to do this. But there is a reason for each one of them, obviously, and each type. But I think it's in order to really harness the CCI's potential for our social innovation, and for our, even, I will wear a little bit the hat of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, even for an economic growth in terms of sustainability, so the future, as you mentioned. That is a challenge, to combine the instruments, but not bring a bureaucratic approach to all of them, and use some examples to exactly say what we mean in real life, rather than in text or in mechanisms and so on.
Thank you, Niki, and it's nice that you mentioned that we should have the right level of bureaucracy, because bureaucracy or too much bureaucracy can kill creativity. I will go to Dimitra, and Dimitra, I would say that you are Greek by training, but you have developed your professional career mostly in UK. So you have this kind of mixed mindset, and I would like to hear your views. And now we are moving to, let's say, the private sector and how the private sector is watching at the future.
Yes, so I'll be very brief, I promise. So I'll explain a little bit about how the Heritage Fund works, and then I have 4 key points about challenges of how to navigate the future that we're facing at the lottery, which I think apply to the sector in general. So about the National Lottery in the UK, the Heritage Fund is part of a broader family of institutions that were designed in the 90s to distribute lottery funding to what is called in the UK the good causes, what we would call typically philanthropic causes. So in 1994, the then Prime Minister enshrined this into law. They said that the proceeds from the National Lottery should be redirected in their majority, grand majority, to good causes. And good causes are the heritage, the arts, they are separate portfolios in British policy making, sports, communities, and then there is also a 5th one, which is more like a joker, changes depending on political priorities. The money that flows from the lottery into the good causes is significant because the British National Lottery is quite rich, people tend to gamble, and a lot of money is being raised. So this is an alternative revenue stream. So in terms of the challenges we've been facing as a funder, which I think apply to the entire sector, we've seen that having the right technology in place is actually quite key, and we were lucky enough to be technology ready when the pandemic hit. So we had the right infrastructure to be able to manage a very quick shifting landscape. So we had to close programs and then open others to help the sector survive, basically, when everything shut down. What we're not ready for is artificial intelligence, and we've been having conversations in-house about how to treat applications which we suspect have gone through AI tools, so they are now, better written in a way, and they present outcomes that would not be presented in the same way if you didn't have this professional tool helping you. And this is an ongoing conversation, and we don't really have the answer for that. And I know that on a European level, they're having the same discussions because they're running an entire operation of funding programs. Then the second point is about resources, not following the ever-expanding investment portfolio, because as I said, we are lucky enough to have a very big portfolio of investment. There's a lot of money flowing through, and I think that in my organization we've had a difficult time actually getting it out of the door because we didn't have enough people. So there is this point to be said about the right balance, people, and then the value of the investment portfolio. But there is also a point here about the right combination of skills, which we talked about in our previous session. We don't always have the people that have awareness of this this multifaceted portfolio, because you have grant subsidies, but you also have all these alternative forms of capital, and not everyone has business acumen and commercial understanding, and also passion for heritage and an understanding of how the sector works and how its people tend to think. And we talked a lot, I think that in your keynote, Fran and Laura, you talked about cash flows. Not everyone in the cultural sector knows how to do a cash flow. They don't even know sometimes how it looks like. So you need to bring other people on board who have these skills. And the last point is about being receptive to feedback, which is not something we often see when we talk to cultural organizations or when we talk to investors. So it's there is a missing link. And you talk to investors, you try to pitch an idea, and they come back and say, yes, but if you had this mix and you did this and that, and then some cultural agents are very, very resistant to changing anything in their proposition. That's not rare, let's say. So there is something to be said here about being agile and flexi. And I think these are the challenges that I have identified now in the present, but I think are going to be very much present in the future as well. This is me.
Thank you, thank you. And we have, before going to the other side of the Atlantic, we'll get another view from the UK, and you should be proud because Nesta is not only doing research and innovation, but you are also a catalyst for innovation and for change. So tell us, what do you see?
It's a very broad-ranging question, so I'm going to do quite a broad answer because Dimitra's really well covered the challenges of funding, which I imagine are pretty universal. I think I just want to say that I feel really optimistic about the future. We've had not that much optimism in this conference so far, and I was taken by what one of the Bobs said last night, the quote from Leo Tolstoy about you don't need to just be analytically aware of a possibility, you need to be able to imagine it. And I think the things that we're seeing are sort of, knowledge gaps, capital gaps, very critically an engagement gap. And all of those are solvable with imagination and the tools that we have at our disposal now. So I think one thing in terms of, to use the kind of micro example from the sector, which I'd be really interested to talk to you about in your position, is one thing we're thinking about in the UK is how do cultural organisations reframe their interactions with their audience from a kind of customer to more of an engaged stakeholder. What does that look like in a membership world where we're all used to being members of things and actually people are crying out on an individual level for belonging and engagement and being a part of something? What does that look like for the future of our organisations? And then to go also to the point that you raised about the artists and artist rights and valuing the artist. I think we have really exciting tools in technology. We don't know exactly how it's going to work now, but actually decentralization is huge in terms of the power imbalances that have kind of been through our sector for a really long time. So actually there is lots of cause to be optimistic. I don't want to talk too much because I think we should hear from the US. I know there's another question. But I think, the generational wealth transfer is huge. As Adriano said, I think there's an opportunity there to really reframe what a public-private partnership looks like. And, the work that we've done has really depended on the impact being the intersection of the agendas of the parties that are coming together. So now that people are more focused on impact, are more focused on social environmental challenges, I think there's a real opportunity to maybe redraw what a public-private partnership can look like. Certainly it's a bit of a out-of-favour notion with the UK public after previous experiments. But I think that actually now that there are stakeholders that with engagement can be aligned, there are real opportunities for capital to work together in a productive way.
Perfect. You are very quick, and thank you for this. And Laura, the floor is yours. What is happening on the other side of the world, actually?
So colleagues have already mentioned bureaucracy and red tape go hand in hand with creating new regulations and standards. And frankly, I'm too impatient to work through that system. So the provocation that I would offer is to say, how can we understand and fully utilize the regulations and standards and similar tools that are already in place and adapt them, focus them on our goals for the creative and cultural industries. And I'll give you two examples of how my organization has tried to do this in the United States. Within the banking sector, there's something called the Community Reinvestment Act. This was put in place back in the 1970s to counterbalance some very bad banking practices that had discriminated against low-income communities. So if people were seeking a mortgage for their home or loans for their businesses, and their businesses were geographically in these poor communities, the banks would just discriminate against them, and the money would not be made available. And the federal government decided this was wrong and has set up a series of regulators who oversee banks and oversee insurance companies. And so these large financial institutions have requirements that they are forced to meet. It's a criteria for their ongoing certifications and being able to continue to function as banks and insurance companies. They have to fulfill obligations under the Community Reinvestment Act to make loans and philanthropy and some other types of services available in these low-income communities. So this is a very big system, and a lot of banks and community banks are touched by this regulation. My organization worked on a white paper, which we did all of the work, but we were lucky enough to co-publish it with the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. The Federal Reserve Bank is one of the regulators for this Community Reinvestment Act. So it's very powerful to co-publish this guidance document with one of the regulatory organizations. And what we did was look back over the past 15 years. We identified 25 or 30 specific examples where, within the context of the Community Reinvestment Act, money was made available to creative businesses and creative places in these low-income communities. We use these examples to demonstrate that if you, as the financial institution, made your money available to these creative and cultural projects, your regulator would not go, no, 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 and disapprove, right, reject this project, because the financial institutions have no incentive in antagonizing their regulator, right? They just want to fulfill this requirement, get it done, and move on. We were able to demonstrate it was absolutely possible, legitimate, within the scope of the act, and that here are 25, 30 examples of how others have done this before you. Very powerful. And so that did not require new regulation, just fully utilizing the existing policy and regulation and demonstrating that others had done it and how you can do it too. The second example, under the President Obama administration, there was something that was approved called the Jobs Act. And one of the elements of the Jobs Act was to allow individuals who are not qualified investors, so have a lower amount of money, a lower amount of investment acumen, allow individuals to make direct investments into young companies, loans and equity investments. And what this did was open up the whole field of crowdfunding to move beyond philanthropy or going on Kickstarter and providing capital to some great project you're interested in. And it allowed individuals for $50, $100, very small increments of money, to be able to make capital available to small businesses through these crowdfunding platforms, which will bring together the money, and so that the company can be raising a meaningful amount of loan capital or equity capital. We identified that a relatively newer entry to this crowdfunding space, a crowdfunding platform called Honeycomb Credit, with their focus on mom and pop brick and mortar businesses that you walk to in your community, not businesses that live exclusively online, but actual businesses you can know and visit, that the focus on these everyday businesses that were raising capital through the Honeycomb Credit platform, 90% of these businesses were in creative industries. They were bakeries, they were breweries, they were florist shops, they were beauty salons, businesses that were in the creative industries. So my organization partnered with Honeycomb Credit to call attention to the presence of these businesses and creative industries on their platform, and to develop a wholesaling model so that large foundations who wanted to make capital available to businesses in the creative industries could put large amounts of money onto the platform, which then would be distributed in small checks to these individual businesses as they had campaigns to raise loans or raise equity capital. Again, we did not need to create a new regulation. We did not even need to create a dedicated platform to allow people to invest in creative economy businesses. We just needed to identify a platform where this was already happening and amplify it. So I suggest, if you're impatient like I am and don't have the capacity to wait slowly and move through the red tape and through the bureaucracy, new regulations and standards, you can take a more guerrilla approach and look to see how to fully apply and utilize existing regulations and existing responses for the creative economy.
Thank you, Laura. And now the impossible task is to Elena, who was the brain of all this morning session and all the amazing speakers. But let me see how we're going to do it. We have only 5 minutes.
First, I recommend that you go back to listening to the previous sessions, starting, I think we started around 10:30, and I think you can connect the dots around lots of information and lots of interesting things. Let us go forward and imagine the future, imagine that we are standing in 2044, and we have disrupted already the way we fund the CCIs and especially the culture sector, and how we see the role of the museums. Laura.
So it was interesting for me to hear that endowments are becoming a growing focus for museums in Europe. Obviously, the museums in the United States depend on their endowments. There's $64 billion sitting in the endowments of America's museums. And so what we've been doing is working for those museums to think about how to invest their endowment money in alignment with their values and their mission. And some of the leading museums responding to this challenge are investing in their local community. They are taking money from their endowment to invest in affordable housing schemes in their local community, to invest in businesses that are creating jobs in their local community, because these museums realize that they can have the most beautiful collection, most beautiful programs, but if people are afraid to come to their neighborhood in their city, because it might be in a poor community, and no one is able to visit the museum or is unwilling to visit the museum, what's happening in the doors of the museum doesn't matter. And so not only are these cultural anchor institutions contributing to quality of life, providing an amenity, bringing pride to their communities, but they're putting their dollars to work in their communities as well, making impact investments.
This is extremely interesting. Fran, what's your experience from how you see the future in relation to museums?
I think going to my earlier point, there are two angles to the museum, and again, this refers back to something last night about the blending between the virtual and the real world. And I feel, as I'm sure we all do, some kind of resistance to that idea, because I know what's real, and I know that there's huge value in going to an actual location and interacting with other people, but also technology opens up the possibilities for how you do that interaction. It opens up the possibility for you to extend your engagement with that institution beyond your time in the location, and it opens up the location to people who can't visit in person. So I think that in a time where we're desperately craving connection, you know, our cultural institutions are really, really important, and there are new opportunities for their ways to engage with their communities. I think that does need, you know, a lot of support and a lot of collaboration in terms of how that, you know, those new technologies or those new relationships are brokered.
So we definitely need the actual space. Do we see ourselves as human beings standing in a natural space and interacting as human beings beyond the fictional world or the virtual world? And Niki?
Well, I think my hope for 2044 would be that, in particular, if I may say, for our country, my country, that we found a way to translate culture more into our everyday lives, exactly in order to be used as an anchor with the past, but as a driver of growth for literal education and economic prosperity, jobs creation, especially at the local level, especially for local communities. I think there is a lot of opportunity there, and in 2044 this combination could really address regional and social cohesion for our country, but also for greater Europe, and also to for the museums to be the sanctuaries, if you like, of connection of people. We have the museums could be the agoras, if I may say. We are in Delphi, after all, of the future, where agoras is not only a shopping mall; it's a center for creation and connection.
So let's hope, Monika and Dimitra, now that we're running out of time, that we see a less dystopian future investing more in museums as catalysts for social cohesion and for progress in our societies. Thank you very much.